Again, welcome to Access Academy. Today we turn again to the second in our webinar series. That series is called Duxbury Braille Translator, from first paddle to flocking flying. I think I am having a hard time with that tongue twister today, so I need to do a little bit more practicing before our third in the series next month. But today, first, we are going to be working in an existing document and using Microsoft Word. So whether you are new to Duxbury Braille Translator, or you're just simply not really sure where you want to start, don't worry. We have a seat at the table for you, and we have the best of the best presenters just waiting in order to start sharing this information with you. And Kyle, I am really excited to welcome you back. I know that we are going to learn so much and we're going to be fully engaged. So I can't wait for you to start.
Thanks, Amy. I am happy to be here. Am I doing a good job of sharing my slides right now?
Absolutely.
Excellent.
We see your title slide.
I'm going to skip over the description. That is part of the PowerPoint slide deck, which is, as Amy said, available from the Access Academy site. And in addition to the chat here, I think slide 65 of that PowerPoint includes a link to the YouTube recording of the first in this session, in this series, rather. I am Kyle DeJute. My title at APH is Braille Trainer, which I like to say means I get to push up my nerd glasses about Braille codes and Braille transcription, kind of to anyone who will listen, who is connected to APH especially. Today, we are moving a little beyond being shivering ducklings at the side of the pond, just dipping our little webbed toes in. Today, we are kind of juvenile, young adult ducklings. We have gotten acclimated to the pool, and now we're exploring. One of our most important things to explore in the pond of Duxbury Braille Translator is codes. So our first main heading of this PowerPoint slide deck is View Codes. The keyboard shortcut to toggle codes on or off is Alt F3. More often than I should admit, I'm doing work last minute on my laptop somewhere, and when I try to use my function keys on this particular keyboard setup, I also have to press the function key to let my F keys be regular F keys. On a standard keyboard, you're not going to have this problem. Your F keys just have one function, and the keyboard shortcut for viewing codes is Alt F3. Or if you are a mouse user, you can certainly go, or you can do it in keyboard shortcuts to view. And then the 5th option is codes. And as with so many Duxbury menu items, the keyboard shortcut is there right in the listing of the drop-down menu. I said it once, view codes is a toggle, which is a little bit of a term, isn't it? It means it can go on or off, and it's the same command for both. So if you go to view and press codes in a document where codes are showing, they'll go away. If you press Alt F3 or go to view and choose codes in a document where codes are not displayed, not showing, then they will appear. So it toggles on or off to see the codes that are giving instructions to Duxbury Braille Translator. This is a really important part of our pond to explore. Again, now that we are somewhat savvy little kind of preteen ducklings, this is so important to explore because the codes represent the instructions being given to Duxbury for the file content. And before I leave our little previews here on the screen of a couple of Duxbury print documents that are displayed with codes showing and not showing, both of these little screen captures do have the translated line showing. Often that displays as a yellow highlighted sort of thing at the very bottom of your program window, or almost at the very bottom, just above the document information. And I'm almost certain that the JAWS command to read this translated line is Alt-7. The thing I want to note here is in the translated line, when our codes are displaying in the document, codes are also displaying in that translated line. So wherever your cursor is in the document, you're going to see the translation based on that line in your translated line. And if you've Alt F3 to turn on showing codes, you've done that in the document and the translated line. I'm going to say it in reverse. Please bear with me and flex your little duck swimming skills. If you are in a document where codes are not currently showing and you Alt F3, then those codes will show up in your translated line. These codes you might call a duck call, a way to communicate with the duck or the Duxbury. Yes, I found a picture of a bunch of little machines that make the duck sound, because different ducks make different sounds, yeah? And technology has changed over time. So the way that we make these little machines to talk to ducks has changed. But back to Duxbury, these codes that we Alt F3 or view codes to either see or hide in both our document and translated line, those codes, there is information about them, of course, in multiple places and trainings. My favorite resource is within the broad Duxbury documentation in the section DBT codes quick reference. And in the interest of doing good presentation, let's go visit the Duxbury website. That's duxburysystems.com, and look for the Duxbury documentation and take a little gander at where the Duxbury codes quick reference is. I am a Windows user, so on duxburysystems.com, I chose DBT Win, and then I'm going to scroll down to the heading DBT Win General Documentation. In the option DBT for Mac, there is also a heading called DBT for Mac Documentation. And from there, I can click on the first link, which is the documentation in English. Again, Duxbury is an internationally used program, so the documentation is also available with some translation. But if I go to the English, which I can imagine is the default for a lot of us, then I get to a page called Duxbury DBT 12.7 help file. This is what's currently linked from the website. Don't go down the rabbit hole, Kyle. We're ducks today. We are not talking about how there are multiple documentations and it's already, I will talk about how it's embedded in your program. Let's just go find that DBT quick reference. Option 7 in the table of contents is templates, styles, and codes. And down in that, down in that, beyond the list of templates available, I'm going to be honest with you here in just a minute and show you how I actually navigate this page. Under codes, there's DBT codes quick reference. It's all in capitals, and it'll take us to a page or a display that's a table with the first column code and description, and then a link to tell me more. And the code and description is arranged in alphabetical order. So it goes in order of signs. And then once you get into the codes that are made up of letters, they'll go through all of the A codes and then into all the B codes and so on and so forth. Now, can you search in this DBT codes quick reference in order to find out what those codes you're exploring do? Totally, because all of this text is searchable, and then the description of the code attempts to explain what instructions it gives Duxbury. Remember, I was on the help file and I said, oh, you can click on templates and styles and codes and then scroll way down. Look, from this page, I could also have Control F to search. And I know I'm looking for DBT codes quick reference. Well, what if I just do codes quick in my search? Why? There's only one place that appears, and that's the link to the DBT code's quick reference. If you're looking for some light reading, even if you're not currently using Duxbury, why, this is available on the internet all the time. Okay, back to our ordered presentation of information. Again, we were talking about those being duck calls and finding out what those codes that you can see mean. What instructions are the codes giving Duxbury? Well, we did use some codes or styles made up of codes as well in my first document. The last time we were together in session 1 of this 4-part series. Here's a little peek at my first document. If we just think about the DXP, the Duxbury print documents, we had a heading, which was cap word, cap list, and we styled it as an H1 heading centered. Do you remember where that style came from, or how we chose which list of styles we were going to do? Right, that had to do with choosing a template when we first set up a document, and then maybe pressing F8 to bring up the the styles and codes list. More of my first document includes the word list. We treated that as a 1-3, or a starting at the far left margin with any long lines for a single item running over in cell 3. Could we have styled it as a list? Why, yes. There's more than one way to explore the Duxbury pond. And our last text item in my first document was a second heading centered, or a second main heading, and that was essay questions. We could have looked at this document with codes showing, or again, pressed Alt F3 to hide codes so we could not be so overwhelmed with information. Now, especially if we had translated that document and gotten a separate Braille file, when we're exploring that Braille file, hiding the codes by toggling them off, would help us see how the actual Braille page is going to be laid out. Now, I'm going to go to a not static, my first document, and pull up Duxbury and pull up my existing work on my first document. So I might Control O to open, or I might File, Open. And Duxbury is going to take me to the last folder that I was in. This time I set up my pins to be knocked down in our bowling today very nicely. We are in the folder I'm calling Files, working through my first document. And so I have a series of files here where I maybe got the original print, and we'll come back to this Word file called my first document for braille.docx. We'll come back, that's not what we're here for right now. We're here for the Duxbury print document that we created last time we were together. So I went File, Open, and now I'm gonna either double click or, navigate to and press Enter, or select and then press Open for my first document.dxp. Duxbury is going to think for a minute and then say, oh, here you go. You have your heading word list styled as a H1 heading centered. And we, for the sake of extra super demonstration, we're just going to reapply that style. If I have the word list, the words word list, and I want to make that a heading, I can press F8 and up will pop my apply style box. Alternatively, I could go to layout and choose the first option, which is apply style. And then I get this full list of styles that belongs to the template we chose for this document, which was UEB, English UEB BANA. Now in this list, I want to go to H. So I just typed the letter H on my keyboard, and that took me down to the first listing in H, which conveniently and by design is H1 heading centered. So I can press Enter, and the text item that my cursor was in now has the paragraph style H1 heading centered. I think that's enough for now. We opened back up our document. We took another look at our styles. What else are we going to talk about in this pond that we're exploring? When I open an existing document, it is always worth visiting what kind of document am I opening? What file type am I opening? When we opened the document we just looked at, I made a very conscious choice to open the DXP, my hard at work document. Yeah, that's the step that I was currently in. If we fast forwarded into the future, I could have been opening my finalized file ready for sharing and embossing, the Braille ready file, or BRF. Yeah. If I do that, which we will in a minute, you might see that the displayed file name at the top of the program window has something interesting going on. We have thoroughly talked about how to view styles and codes. If you are in a comfortable place, why, it would not be wrong for you to say it out loud for your own memory. What is the keyboard shortcut or the menu combination for viewing styles and codes, or for hiding them? Yeah, it is. It's Alt F3, or View and Codes. Could we open something that's not a DXP, a BRF, a Duxbury file in Duxbury? Yes, yes. And hold that thought. That is a really tailoring your workflow kind of question. I want to make sure we really know the pond that we're working in before we start to kind of make irrigation channels from it. So when we're considering which file type to open, remember when we opened our working Duxbury print file for my first document, we made a conscious choice to open the DXP and not the BRF. Or if there were a DXB, we didn't open that either. I want to refresh our memories just about something while we're here. If I open back up this Duxbury print document and I translate, which would be file, translate, or Control T. We love Control T. Then I've generated a Braille document from that print document, exactly how it was. And this is a separate file, this DXB, that came from my translation. Okay. A DXB is a Braille document. A BRF is a Braille document. They are not exactly the same. BRFs don't have any codes or styles. Which is why they are so easily readable by multiple software programs, including embossers software and other Braille editing programs and text editors like Microsoft Word or Notepad. BRF files, Braille ready files, they don't take up a lot of memory space. Yeah, they don't have a lot of instructions in them. Not only do they not really have codes or styles, they're made up of just hard, like unbreaking spaces between things, and line breaks where a line break fell in the translation you had, page breaks, and ASCII or possibly Unicode characters. They are, again, a BRF is often for an embosser. It is not super huge and it is very simple. This is different from another kind of Braille file, which is a DXB, which does very much include those codes and styles that are the instructions to Duxbury and that we toggle on and off with Alt F3. Duxbury has either ASCII or maybe Unicode characters in Duxbury's proprietary SimBraille font. Just Braille characters. Yeah, a DXB is a Braille document. It doesn't have print characters. And the DXB could be a working file. And because it's not print, yeah, it's not a reliable file to choose a different code for your translation all of a sudden. Duxbury DXB is a Duxbury file. Yeah, I think can be opened by other Braille translation software programs, but really best read by DBT, unlike the BRF. Yeah. So if we were to turn on codes while looking at a BRF file, we might see just spaces. The code for that is just an apostrophe. Yeah, so those are hard spaces. or line breaks. The code for that is the less than or the opening angle bracket. If we have a line that has only an opening angle bracket or a line break or a hard return rather on it, why that line is blank in the Braille file without codes showing. In a BRF, that is pretty much exclusively what we see, spaces and line breaks. We might see a PG or a PG code, I believe, which means a new page, but that's it. That's all the BRF has going on. If we were to look at codes, if we were to display codes, toggle on codes, okay, Kyle, that's enough. If we were to toggle on codes in a DXB, then we could see styles like ref page number, which gives the print page number. Whatever's inside the ref page number style is what Duxbury treats as the print page number. We could see styles like H1 heading centered. We love that one. It's the first listing in the H category of the codes list for the template English UAB BANA, and so on and so forth. I might note here in the DXB that, again, this is a Braille file, not a print file. So some of our Braille characters that came from coding in the print document now are just Braille characters, yeah, not codes. So if we have a word italicized, our italic word indicator is just Braille cells. It's no longer coding or styling instructions to Duxbury. It's the inflexible Braille cells. But the DXB has the codes, the BRF doesn't really. Here we are at a poll opportunity. We are, again, these sort of juvenile, hardworking ducks exploring our environment. We've gotten a little acclimated. We've learned some things so far. Let's see if we remember part of that. Which option best completes the following sentence? Quote, view codes affects blank. First option, the main document. Second option, the translated line. Third option, both the main document and the translated line.
That poll is launched and I'm watching some results come in. We have 89 in our audience today, which is exciting. So which option best completes the sentence? I will go ahead and they're still coming in. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll here and share out. We got up to 47 participants that answered. So here you go, Kyle.
Most of you are listening and know the shortcut to these kinds of questions. Like, it's almost always wise to choose both or all of the above. And the answer is, in fact, view codes affects both the main document and the translated line. Thank you for playing. We will have more polls. I'm going to take this moment to pause and answer a question I noticed in the chat. And full spoiler, I'm going to answer it by saying we're going to touch on that. Please keep me honest, and if I don't touch on it when we're talking about Word, to make sure and talk about does it make sense to translate into a DXB, that's a Duxbury Braille document, if you want to keep Word formatting. I think when we talk about using Word as we continue on today, that we will be able to answer that question. Our next main heading in this PowerPoint is a very important setting in DBT. Yeah, no pressure, very important. The very important setting is read formatted Braille without interpretation. So in order to apply that setting, and I will tell you in detail why, don't do it yet, Kyle, you said you're going to, right? So in order to apply this very important setting, we open the Duxbury program, yeah, the program window. So we want to close any documents we have inside our program window. And then from the global drop-down menu, choose Formatted Braille Importer. And then something will pop up. Yeah, it's a box that says Global Formatted Braille Importer. And the very first option is Read Formatted Braille Without Interpretation. If we check that box, then all the other options in this pop-up, they gray out, they close, they are not available. We could go down a rabbit hole about how in a production environment or in an historical archival environment, those options could be useful, but our workflows are pretty much always going to need read formatted Braille without interpretation turned on. So one more time, how to apply this very important setting is to have Duxbury open at the program window and then go to the global drop-down menu. The last option is formatted Braille importer. When we choose that option, our global formatted Braille importer box pops up and we navigate to read formatted Braille without interpretation. And check it. Then hit OK so that setting stays. This means that when we open a BRF, we're going to get the Braille cells exactly as they were set by the BRF creator with those hard spaces and hard returns, and not Duxbury trying to look at the layout of the Braille cells and identify what role any given symbol's sequence is playing and what formatting it has based on where the Braille cells are. This is a significant task for any software to look at the layout of Braille cells on a page and identify which cells are performing which function, like what's a page number, what's a centered heading, what's a list. And when we have a BRF that has already been transcribed and prepared, we do not want Duxbury to sort of help in that way. Yeah, we don't want the interpretation. In other words, having read formatted Braille without interpretation checked allows a finely tuned file to remain finely tuned. In Duxbury's documentation, which we looked at earlier, there's this good discussion about this under importing formatted Braille files, under item 3, starting to use DBT. Oh, which is a delightful section of the documentation anyway, starting to use DBT. I know George Bell and some of the other writers of the DBT documentation have done an exceptional job of answering a lot of questions that have come up in the past. So again, when we don't have this very important setting checked or turned on, then Duxbury tries to look at the BRF and interpret what's going on based on where the spaces and hard returns and page breaks are. And it's just a little bit like a game of telephone. Yeah, we had a person tell the software, I want the print to do this, and then, okay, that means the Braille does this, and then the Braille file tells the transcription software, hey, I'm doing this, and the transcription software says, oh, I hear you saying I'm doing marshmallows on a stag with coconuts. That kind of absurdity in layout is a problem if our setting isn't in place. Whew. Now it's time to see if I shared appropriate information and if you remembered it. Sort of. This one is, I think, much trickier than the last one. So the poll question is true or false? Every Braille file active in Duxbury Braille Translator, DBT, is a DXB file. True or false?
Our audience is thinking about it. And let's see where things are at. We've leveled out. So I'm going to go ahead and share with you, Kyle. So 74% said false. Were we correct? You are on mute.
Not this time, but that's more my fault than your fault. The answer to the question is the statement was every active file in Duxbury is a DXB, every active Braille file. So if I were to open a BRF, Ooh, you guys, I did that really fast. Let's just do it a little slower. I open Duxbury, I go to File, Open, I get to my File Explorer, and I might choose my first document.brf. If I turn, oh, and again, when I open a BRF, I'm going to get a pop-up that says Import File. Now you'll remember we set that very important setting. So when my import filter has formatted Braille, it's going to open without interpretation. Duxbury is going to open the BRF without interpretation. And now my file displayed is, my file name displayed is my first document.dxb. It is in fact never going to happen that Duxbury's displayed file name says .brf, because as soon as Duxbury has opened a BRF, it becomes an active Duxbury file, and you could apply coding in this file. So it doesn't appear as we've originally opened the BRF, but if we went to a line and pressed F8 to bring up our style menu, why, we could tell Duxbury to apply a style now to this material. So one more time, anytime you open a Braille file in Duxbury, it's going to be displayed as a DXB. And this is because it is an active file in Duxbury, no longer untouched and untouchable as a shareable BRF. That's not a perfect explanation, but I hope that some of you will keep me really honest in the chat if that was more confusing than helpful about when you open any Braille file in Duxbury, it's going to be a DXB file. Duxbury will never open a file and tell you that it is a .brf in the displayed file name at the top of the program window. I want to tell you a lot more. What about my second document? What about if I base a document off of this one? What about if I want to send something to my embosser? There are lots of different embossers, and you can set an embosser in for your document. You can set a default embosser for your global Duxbury connection. I wish that we could send some ultra intelligent duck out to every individual who ever wants to emboss, who would like use their little bill to tap on their keyboard and make the embosser and software connection. Since we don't have super ultra intelligent ducks to send out to each person every time they want to emboss, I have to fall back on the old standby. Please reach out to your best support person for IT, for your administrator, possibly for documentation and Duxbury customer service. Other file types? Sure. We talked about how Duxbury can open other file types. We also could take from one and move into another. Why is scanning so varied? What if I have a PDF that's just like a picture of a document? Or gosh darn it, what if I have a picture that I have been sent and I need to create the Braille from? Why do I sometimes get good text from that and sometimes not? I can't answer all of those or share perspectives on all of those. I want only to step off of my sort of rolling ladder through the beautiful library of information and say, there are answers to all those questions. So don't give up. The last poll I didn't set you up for with great success. But this one is about what you're already thinking, not really about what I've said. And the poll question here, or the quiz question here, is what do you think a QWERTY, QWERTY, keyboard is? First option, a computer keyboard where the most common consonants and vowels are on the home row, except for the letter U. Second option, a computer keyboard based on the first typing layout, invented to complement the typewriter. Last option, a keyboard instrument that is supported by a strap around the neck and shoulders, similar to the way a guitar is held.
These are some detailed answers to think through. I'm going to give it just another moment. And I think we've leveled out. Okay, it's a good time to share out results with you. All right, Kyle, 83% chose answer B. A computer, what is it, keyboard based on the first typing layout invented to complement the typewriter.
Yes, indeed. You've got that history of keyboards there in a lot of our audience. The most commonly used keyboard is the QWERTY keyboard, and it's called that because the first row of letters from the left, the letters in that row are Q, W, E, R, T, Y, and then they continue into U, I, O, P. The other options, well, the last one is my favorite and the silliest. That's a keytar. Yeah, you hold it like a guitar, but it has a keyboard on it. This is like 80s fabulous. And a computer keyboard were the most common consonants, so that was an innovation that came later, more for computing, and that's a different keyboard layout than QWERTY. Don't do it, Kyle. Don't go down the rabbit hole. Just show the picture of QWERTY keyboards. This is an image from UEB Online, the Australian online course. And they have a resources and sort of help section, which includes some explanation about how to do 6-key entry on a QWERTY keyboard, which is what most of us have and what a lot of our laptops have. And for UEB Online and for Duxbury by default, though this is a setting you can change, the default keys for 6-key entry on a QWERTY keyboard are SDF, JKL. So on a lot of keyboards, those keys that your index fingers are going to go on have a little dot or a little line that's raised on the key. And so you can tactually feel those and then put your middle fingers down on the next key and your ring fingers down on the next keys. And this, of course, makes our sort of braille shape from our fingers where F is dot 1, D is dot 2, S is dot 3, and then J is dot 4, K is dot 5, and L is dot 6. We still use the space bar for spacing. We use the enter or return key for line breaks, and we can use the backspace and often the delete key to erase to the left or to erase sort of to the right. So on a QWERTY keyboard, when we do 6-key entry, our default keys are SDF, JKL. Oh, hold on. I'm not quite ready for working in Braille documents. I will be. And 6-key entry is tempting and important for working in Braille documents. Let me go back for one moment to say, if I were saying the letters that are the defaults across the QWERTY row, it's SDF, JKL. If I were saying them in the order of the Braille dots that they correspond to, it would be FDS, JKL. Okay. So our next main heading is working in Braille documents. First of all, we love 6-key entry, and a lot of us transcribers hit Control T from a Duxbury print document, and we find ourselves feeling like kind of like we are in the promised land. Yeah, we're in a Braille file and we can 6-key enter exactly what we want, and we can even copy and paste and move things around. Golly gee, it's a DXB. We can apply styles and codes. We love it. And 6-key entry is also beautiful for Braille users. Yeah. So for people who read and write with Braille, that physical memorization, that sort of physical or muscle memory can be great for remembering Braille cell shapes and for associating meaning with dot arrangements through a very sort of physical relationship. To that end, if it will help you to do Braille writing practice, the 6-key entry is the cornerstone of PerkyDuck, which is Duxbury Braille Translator's sort of little sibling or little cousin that just does 6-key entry. Yeah. And it's recommended often for the National Library Services Instruction Manual for Braille Transcribing. That is the certification course in the United States. The other 6-key entry program that is often recommended for that course is Braille Zephyr, which is like the little sibling of APH's transcription program, Braille Blaster. But you can also do your 6-key writing practice with your SDF JKL on a QWERTY keyboard. In UEB Online, which we talked about, they have a series of different practice courses. And of course, our refreshable Braille displays allow 6-key entry, and so too do the APH online tutorials. There's not just Braille Brain, which is for literary Braille, but also an APH tutorial on UEB Technical or UEB Math Science, same thing. And also an APH online tutorial for Nemeth code. And all of those allow you to just practice your 6-key entry. Ooh, okay, move on. Now, I said sometimes us transcribers who love Braille get into a DXB and we feel like we're in the promised land and we start making changes and moving things around. And our brains tell us a convenient truth, which is I'm still working in the same content, so any change I make in the Braille is going to be made in the print as well. And my friend, that is not true. Please remember each Duxbury file, each sort of doggy in the program window of Duxbury is separate and unconnected to all the others. So once you are editing in any file, really, you're stuck there. More true in a Braille file than in a Duxbury print file, because the translation from print to Braille is not as clean, maintained, very reliable as the translation from print to Braille. Not least of all because of that reason we talked about earlier, where some of the coding, the instructions to Duxbury, in the print file become translated Braille cells, like the typeform indicators in our Braille file. So once we are editing in a Braille file, we're stuck there, yeah, because our edits aren't going back to the print document. Now, having said that, please don't let me decide for you how you're going to work in your transcription. Please don't let me tell you what your software needs are. You are the person who's important and you are using Duxbury. So don't let Duxbury tell you how to use it. Yeah? We want you to have information about how the files are related and how other people have had success in transcription and what might happen if you do work in different areas, so you can make an informed choice about how to fly the jet that is Duxbury Braille Translator. All right, did I tell you what I intended to? And do you remember it? The poll question or quiz question is, which keys of a QWERTY keyboard are the usual defaults for 6-key entry? First option, SDF JKL. Second option, WERUIO. Third option, TGVYHB.
And I know I'm going to be interested, Kyle, in this one. If I entered all those letters correct into the Zoom platform. So we'll see.
It looks good to me.
Okay. All right. Well, if we do, we have a lot of our participants today that are out in the audience that are answering this question. I'm going to go ahead and end it out. We've had 60 answers submitted. And here is our result. 98% of the audience said SDFJKL, and what is in Zoom matches your PowerPoint.
You're so right. Absolutely. The default keys for 6-key entry are usually SDF, JKL. We talked about how we transcribers love Braille and we love to input Braille in 6-key entry. And when we're in a Braille file, the temptation to just get carried away with doing that and not return to the print document to keep working, the temptation is great. Could we indulge some of our love of 6-key entry in a print document? Yes, absolutely. Just remember to apply a style to it. If you 6-key enter something in your print document, remember to apply a style that tells Duxbury, hey, what I typed here, don't translate that. Just give me the Braille cells that correspond to what I 6-key entered here. And when you 6-key enter in a print document, what you're going to get are the ASCII print characters that correspond to the Braille cell that you just 6-key entered. I'm going to pull up the program here in a minute and do it and try to explain it in a way that helps that really click. And then we'll come back here to talk about a Spider-Man quote. So Duxbury, come here, be a print document. Let's say I want to start a new one, print, maybe I let it be my default template, English UEB BANA. Thanks. And then I just have my itchy fingers and I want to 6-key enter. Why, I could go to, sorry, having a special moment. There we go. Under View, 6-key entry is the 4th or 5th option, and that shortcut is F2, just to toggle. So I could type cap KYLE, could, ooh, that's a short form, so just 2 letters, CD, I don't know what, could enjoy a puppy. Now, I've typed that and I got some characters, and if I translate, or if I had turned on my translated line, I would see, uh-oh, not what I expected, not the capital indicator, but instead .1. What's that about? Well, it's because I didn't say, hey, Duxbury, these things that I just typed, please apply a style to those, a style like exact translation. So now just give me the Braille cell that corresponds to the comma, the ASCII print character comma, and then you get a capital indicator. One more time, if I need maybe the transcriber defined shape indicator, that's .4, dots 1, 2, 4, 6. If I 6-key enter those cells and they have the style exact translation around them, when I translate, Duxbury is going to say, look, girl, I didn't even think about what you actually meant. I just saw an @ sign, and so I gave you a .4, and I saw a $sign, and so I gave you dots 1, 2, 4, 6. So you don't have to know the print ASCII characters. You could just like not look at your screen. Yeah, not listen to the feedback and 6-key enter away. Maybe you're already thinking, could I copy from a Braille document and paste the symbol sequence into my print document? Sure, yeah. Kyle is still talking. If I 6-key entered that in my Braille file, I could maybe copy it, maybe Control C, and then go back to a print document and in an exact translation character style, paste those symbols. And now if I translate, I'm still going to get the same cells. So yes, Virginia, it is possible to use 6-key entry in print in Duxbury. Just make sure to apply exact translation or something similar to get the cells and not an interpretation of the signs that you have generated. This can be tricky, right? Make sure you're following through the process and checking your results, because this can be a powerful tool, like so many of them, and with great power comes great responsibility. Again, when we talk about codes, anytime you can go to the DBT codes quick reference and see a bit about what those codes do. Oh, I think, yeah, in Foundations of Duxbury, the webinar, we talked about how there is a modify style option, and that will help you see what codes make up a style. And we talked also in that webinar about how styles are made up of codes. Now, it's good we still have some time. I'm going to pause for just a minute I did see a specific question in the chat. Is there a way to insert 2 blank cells in a print file, like a DXP, in Duxbury? Sure, yeah, of course. There's a couple of ways to space things out in your DXP. So real fast, based on your question, if I were working in a DXP and I wanted to, I left it with 6 key entry on. I can't touch type on a QWERTY keyboard in print with 6 key entry still turned on. Better press F2 in Duxbury to toggle off 6 key entry. And so I had maybe the phrase column 1 and then column 2, and I want to somehow space between them. I could hit the space bar a bunch of times, but Duxbury is just going to translate that as a single space. Yeah. Remember those hard spaces that we saw in a BRF file? You can get those in any file by pressing Alt F2. And however many of those you have, those hard spaces, Duxbury will recognize and translate them as spaces. Don't go down the rabbit hole, Kyle, of settings that could change the way Duxbury treats multiple spaces. Just say you could use hard spaces. Now, there are additional ways to do this too. Yeah, you can use a tab code to tell Duxbury to move over what comes after to a specific cell. So maybe tab 18 instead of a series of hard spaces. And then what comes after the code tab 18 or tab any number is going to start in cell or column 18. How do you do Alt F2 on a Mac? You know, that is a good question for the big base of users, I'm afraid, on the internet. That is the kind of thing that it's worth looking up, yeah? Because enough people do it. So sorry, I don't know off the top of my head, but there is a Mac command for hard spaces in Duxbury as well, or an equivalent to Alt F2. You could also insert it through the codes list, yeah. So our next main heading in our pond exploration as juvenile ducklings is working from Word. Here's a very quick checklist for this workflow. Get the original file. Maybe it's a picture, maybe it's a PDF, maybe, hopefully, it's an accessible Word or an accessible OpenOffice document. Then open Microsoft Word. And if you have Swift installed, you choose a template on the Braille tab, which appears on Word's ribbon. Get that content from the original file into the Word file, either because it's what you had open, and then you applied a template, or because you've created a new document, chosen the template, and you maybe copy paste content into your working Word file. View formatting, so you can see the styles being used and any spaces and returns or tabs in your Word document. Remove unnecessary formatting. Apply styles and other transcription tools, especially from the various options under the Braille tab that Swift brings into Word. And then Swift, which is send to Word immediately for translation, or send from Word immediately for translation. Demonstration and practice. Okay, so come here, Word. I don't really want to open very fast, says Microsoft Word. There you are, thanks. So I'm going to open a new file. And the file I'm going to open is hopefully from that same collection of working through my first document. Let's say this was the original print document that I had. Bang. Ooh, it's gorgeous. It's got those headings, word list, and essay questions in rainbow colored text. And the word list is in, I don't know, has some kind of shading or colored box to make the background black. And then looks like my essay question text is in bold. Now, if I want to work from this file, and we'll talk for a little moment about why I might want to just copy and paste this into another file. Then you might see on my ribbon, which has File, Home, Insert, Draw, Design. Yours might not look exactly like this. You can customize which tabs are available on the ribbon. One of those available here is Braille. And because I haven't had this used the Braille tab in this document before, what pops up starts with Choose Template. And then there's Style Map, Open in DBT, Emboss Direct, and some options where you could change some of your defaults. Now, I don't hardly ever need any of those things. They're great for refining a workflow and not necessary for our building from the ground up transcriptions. Choose template, however, is very necessary and very related to what we've already done. Yeah. And really, especially for those of us working in North America, a lot easier than the choose a template in the Duxbury workflow or the Duxbury only workflow, because we only have 4 options in choose template. The options are BANA, EBAE, or eBay. That's the old literary code, not Unified English Braille, or BANA, eBay, Nemeth, again, the old Braille codes, Nemeth 1972, and the old pre-UEB eBay. I don't think you're ever going to need those. If your choose template looks a little different, that's fine. If your Duxbury looks a little different, that's fine. Goodness knows there are different versions of Duxbury and also of this Swift program, which has given us the Braille tab. The template I'm going to choose, spoiler, is BANA UEB. The other option might be BANA UEB with Nemeth. Once I've chosen a template for this Word file, get a little hourglass while Word processes and opens up lots of options in the Braille tab. So this Braille tab comes from the Duxbury free program Swift. We're going to talk a little more about that in a minute. Now I can start transcribing. I might want word list to be a heading, and that's one of the options in the paragraph styles group under the Braille tab. In the headings drop-down menu, I might choose heading 1. And I might do the same for essay questions. I might do that by simply pressing F4 here in Word, which repeats the last thing that I did. For my list of words, I might remember that Kyle applied a numbered style that was 1, 3. So I can choose the numbered drop-down menu, still in the paragraphs style. And my first indent is 1, and run over lines are going to be in cell 3. That'll give me the style 1, 3. Now hold on a minute. How did I get this lovely little pane over at the left of my Word document that shows what style each paragraph is in? Yes, side note, Swift is available for Mac. The style pane area, which I don't know why I dislike that term so much, but the style pane area in Word is something you can turn on, I think under, what is it, File? Yeah, File, and then Options, under this. Oh, you guys, I'm like making it up when I know that I've already written this out somewhere else. Let's come back to this when my mind has returned to me. So part of what we saw in starting to work on a file that will go to Duxbury in Word is that Braille tab popping up in Microsoft Word's ribbon, which is the same place where you might find file or design or layout, and then the menus underneath that. The ribbon combines a menu bar and toolbar into a single floating pane. You can, because it's Microsoft Word and like $1 billion program, you can customize where the ribbon appears and what might be on the quick access toolbar that's associated with it. The very first time you run Word after installing Swift, and Duxbury has a great page on Swift and what it is, the very first time you run Word, you'll get the options dialog for Swift. And that after you've chosen a couple of very straightforward defaults, every time you open Word after that, Swift is part of the startup. Like Duxbury has said, here you go, Word. Here's a program from us. You can run it and allow our Braille transcribers to have a Braille tab when they're using Word. And that Braille tab appears in the ribbon of Word because of the program from Duxbury. Yeah, Duxbury has said, here's Swift. You can download it. It's free. It'll work for you if you have a copy of Duxbury, if you have a licensed copy of Duxbury. And Swift is an add-in. Duxbury isn't the only company or the only people who make an add-in. It's a not Microsoft or not Word program or addition. It's an add-in that often when you see the word splash screen, you might see loading add-ins and then in parentheses 1 of 4. And that might say Swift underneath it because it's loading in that add-in as part of its Word is loading in the add-in as part of its startup process. Swift is an acronym, the actual word for send Word file immediately for translation. So send Word immediately for translation, Swift. And Swift works as a bridge between Microsoft Word and Duxbury. Yeah, it just, again, provides these Braille transcription related tools in the Braille tab. And also, if you push the Send to Duxbury button in the Braille tab, it essentially opens Duxbury, goes to File, Open, and chooses that Word file you've been working in. Just in the background, opens up the Word file you've been working on in Duxbury. Disclaimer, here we are, back at the cockpit of a jet that you are flying. You are the one using Duxbury. You are the one transcribing. The workflow that really works for you is what you should do. Word is not required to use Duxbury Braille Translator. That's why we started out just going to File, New in Duxbury and starting to put something into a DXP so we could translate to a separate DXB file. Because you can do your transcription using only Duxbury. And I work with some transcribers who are firmly of the opinion that that is the best way to transcribe and that it is inefficient to use Word. I disagree, and it makes for great party entertainment and conversation because we strongly disagree about what is the most useful workflow for transcription. I find that using the billion-dollar Microsoft Word program allows me to easily and quickly make shortcuts and interact with the user interface, and it makes my transcription process more efficient. But there are other transcribers who say, you've just introduced a whole nother software program. 2, if you count Swift, and that is more complicated and slows down my transcription process. Different strokes for different folks. Regardless of what your workflow is, we have to manage our files. And of course, that means keeping our file names clear and consistent so we can kind of see the breadcrumbs path as we move through the transcription process from original print document, possibly through a Word document where we're using the tools from the Braille tab, into a DXP, a Duxbury print document, and then into a separate unconnected DXB, which we don't really have to save if we never edit in it, right? And then a final BRF. Our file names being short, clear, and consistent really helps with seeing that workflow. Whenever we save a file, we have to be aware of clones or computer-generated names. Yeah, if we've saved this file before and we save as, the computer might suggest a name that has parentheses copy at the end of it. Or if we've translated a couple of times, our first option to save a Braille file might say parentheses 9,999,999 or 6, because it's the 6th Braille file we've made. So file management is wonderfully important, and I know you know that. Here's an example of how I do some file management. We've seen this File Explorer window a couple of times. These are my files on the way to my first document, and they are in order of modification. This is a little bit of a confessional screenshot here because the final file, no. Yeah, the final file, the BRF, I kind of worked backwards from there for this, just for this presentation. That's not what I would recommend to you. But that happened at 12:35 a.m. on a March day. And I do have in my first document, again, those kind of potential breadcrumb process where I've gone from the original file, or I could go from the original file to the Braille to the DXP to finally the BRF. I didn't describe that super well. Let me know if you have questions. But first, I have a question for you. True or false? A BRF file, that's the one with no codes and styles, can only be opened by Duxbury. True or false?
Well, I am looking at the results as they're getting dropped in. A BRF file can be opened by Duxbury. True or false? I'm going to go ahead and end the poll here with 57 of our participants today putting in an answer. Kyle, 89% said it was false.
Absolutely
Are we correct?
right.
All right.
A BRF file can be opened by some embossers software programs, by Word or text editors. That's one of the beauties of the Braille Ready file. Very shareable, though not very formatted. Yeah. Appropriate to our next category, we've got a couple of people in the chat raise two separate kinds of issues. One sort of about file or program logistics, and the other about workflows. So first, workflows. Not everybody uses Swift and the Braille tab. Absolutely. Even without the Braille tab, you can have a document in Word that has different paragraph styles and is accessible. Yeah. If you have created an accessible Word document, then it will map, it will move smoothly to Duxbury. So excellent point. I kind of described that there were two workflow options, one that goes through Word with Swift to Duxbury, and another that goes just in Duxbury. And that's not true. There is a third way, and that is through Word, no Swift. And then Duxbury opens that accessible, nicely formatted and coded Word document. Thank you for that point. The other question was just about software logistics, and we don't need to go through the whole answer to that. If you contact Duxbury's customer service, they can certainly help you choose which Swift file is appropriate for you to download and install based on your operating system and your version of Duxbury. The next main title here is words, in quotes, Word, like Microsoft Word. Words of advice. Here are the things about Swift especially, but even about using Duxbury to format, using Word to format. These are the things that often trip people up. How do I see what's happening in my document? How do I show the formatting? Like if I put in a Duxbury code, or if I have a enter, a hard return, how do I see all of that stuff? And the answer is either by pressing the Pilcrow in the paragraph group under the Home tab. That's the Show Hide Formatting Marks button. Or by pressing Control asterisk, or Control Shift 8, yeah? Or possibly by navigating menus by pressing Alt H8. So if you are in Microsoft Word and your style pane area is not on, and you also aren't seeing any spaces or hello computer, please work. There we go. Stop bouncing. As you're working, you can see that formatting by choosing Show Hide in the paragraph group in the Home tab. And when you choose, it's a toggle. When it's on, you can see the spaces and the pilcrows that are at the end of a text item. And you could see tabs, and they're displaying on the screen, so they read out. The other thing that often trips up someone in a workflow that includes Word is seeing the style pane area. And one way to do that is to turn to draft view. Remember when I forgot how to do this just a few minutes ago? So let's say we're working in this document where we turned on show formatting marks in Word, and we want to also see what styles, what paragraph styles are in our document. We would go to the View tab, and in the Views group, choose Draft. That opens up the style pane area. And if you are site dependent, you can hover your mouse over the vertical line that divides the style pane area from the document content, and your cursor will probably change to a resizable thing, and you can make your style pane area bigger or smaller. Okay, so we can show hide formatting marks. We can choose draft view to see the style pane area. And those are the two biggest things that throw people off in a Word workflow. So, did I tell you what I meant to? And do you remember? Next question. Who maintains or who created the Braille tab that appears in Microsoft Word's ribbon? Was it Microsoft, Duxbury, or extraterrestrials?
I think we have a few individuals, Kyle, that have a great sense of humor in our audience right along with you. So I will go ahead and I'm going to get up to 50. I just have two more of our friends in the audience submit. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and pause it here and share results. We do have a small handful of our friends that are with us today that chose answer C, but predominantly 76% said B, Duxbury.
And they are quite right. Those three of you who chose extraterrestrials, yes, I agree. That's a great explanation. That's a fun one. But our history relevant to today tells us the Braille tab appears on Word's ribbon because of Swift, which is that bridge program. Send Word immediately for translation. And that bridge program, Swift, which gives us the Braille tab, that's all Duxbury. It's an add-in from Duxbury. Here we are back in the cockpit of the jet that we ducks are learning to fly. And golly, there are a lot of resources about what our Braille should look like. For example, the UEB code, including guidelines for technical material and all updates from ICEB, the International Council on English Braille. Can't forget them. You can always go to their website, iceb.org. Not only do they have code books available for download, as well as any updates to those code books. The latest version of Rules of UEB is 2024. ICEB also has a newsletter that comes out periodically that you can sign up to receive. It usually has a fun practice question in Braille, in addition to some good news and good insights. Another resource added to our dials and knobs and levers in the jet cockpit is Banna's page on Braille formats. That's going to help us make formatting decisions, especially in North America, about our headings and our lists and whatnot. That is the guidelines document for formatting from Banna, the Braille Authority of North America. An NBA, no, not that NBA, the National Braille Association has, among many other webinars, the do's and don'ts of typeforms. I know we talked about typeforms today, so I wanted to call out a specific webinar, though the NBA, the National Braille Association, has a number of resources. I mentioned it a couple of times. Foundations of Duxbury webinar exists and gives more and different explanations of the pieces of Duxbury than we could delve into today. It also mentions the Dux user and Dux announce listservs that can be so wonderful for asking for help and learning about the latest things happening at Duxbury. Foundations of Duxbury also mentioned how to check your Duxbury version and demonstrated how to check that version and license. And we also looked at it today, where the Duxbury documentation is online. I think this is our last poll, our last little quiz question for you today. Who maintains the program Swift, which is an acronym for Send Word File Immediately for Translation? Is it Microsoft, Duxbury, or Louis Braille?
I always enjoy a good sense of humor. All right. We have already really quickly made it up past 50. So I'm going to share out. And Kyle, we had one person who voted and submitted that it was Louis Braille, but 83% again chose Duxbury.
It's true. Duxbury maintains the program Swift. So what did we do today? Did we manage to explain two differences between a DXB, a Duxbury Braille file, and a BRF file? We also talked about Swift and making the Braille tab appear in Word's ribbon. And we identified which keys of a QWERTY keyboard are traditionally used for Perkins Brailler style 6-key entry. I think we did it. I think we did it. I hope we did it. Again, my name is Kyle. If you want to email me directly, it's the first letter of my first name and my last name, kdjute@aph.org. There are a couple other parts of this series. Again, this is slide 65 that has the link to the recording of our first session, and we will be together again on April 15th, really diving into examining styles and codes and refining workflows for getting good at editing on April 15th. And before I give up the microphone, I want to answer one question that came up in the chat. The question was, can we apply codes in UEB basic format? Yes.
That's great. I was going to follow up with that. So now I can check that one off my to-do list while you're on the slide that talks about our next webinar in the series. Will be a third in a series of 4, that April 15th, getting good at editing. If you are on the mailing list to receive notifications from APH about our webinars, that email was released yesterday, which includes the registration link for this event. It is also will be getting uploaded to our APH webpage Access Academy webpage. We will get that updated for you. So if you're on that mailing list, check your email and you might have the registration link already for that. We will definitely include that registration link in the follow-up email that you receive for being a participant of our webinar today. Hold on just one moment. I've got to find the right button to push.